Good morning and welcome to The Wise Why. I am joined by Damien Marsh this morning, and I hope I said that correctly because I grew up in the 70s and 80s with that film. And we are going to probably talk about that because Damien also grew up about the same time. So as you can imagine, we might be around the same age. But as usual, it's The Wise Why. And we don't worry about Kirsty Vandermark. What we do want to know is about Damien. So Damien, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Kirsty. Damien Marsh, joining Wise Why at the kind request of Kirsty, and hopefully a bit of insight into myself. I think, as the bio says, I'm a Yorkshire lad, but grew up in the north, then headed south. And I think we'll come on to some of those topics shortly with Kirsty. Currently working in the security industry for a global engineering firm. Loving it because it's really innovative, and some of the things we're doing there is groundbreaking. I think that's a common theme throughout this session is, where I am today, my love of fast things, particularly jets, the fact that I'm uber excited about going to see Top Gun tonight, and just to give a bit of background and insight into my journey.
So we're going to talk about Top Gun. Let's just get it out there because you have put your name there, Damien Maverick Marsh, and I love that. I really do. I grew up, I think Top Gun was probably one of the most influential films of my teenage years. That and Pretty Woman, and I'm trying to think what else was there. Oh, there were a whole load, wasn't there? The Breakfast Club. Why? Which one?
So there's many for Rocky, Rocky 4.
So why Top Gun? Because I know this is going to lead us onto a really lovely subject in a minute. Why Top Gun?
Yeah, I mean, it's just from my roots as a child. I quickly developed a passion for aircraft, particularly fast jets. And I know we'll come on to my aspirations of wanting to join the RAF, hence the name Damien Maverick Marsh. I don't know, it's just a film, and the whole reason of the film was to try and get more people subscribed into the US Air Force or the US Naval Air Force. As a recruitment video, it was billed as, but it was exciting, it was fast, there was fast jets and flight scenes and music, and it was just a really good film. And I've been watching the trailers and taking the kids tonight, and can't wait to go and see it.
I can imagine. I hope you're not disappointed because I loved the first film. I thought it was brilliant, and you look at the actors from there, like Mark Green and of course Tom Cruise has gone huge, but Mark Green was in ER for a very long time, and I remember just loving Goose. I can't help it. I actually preferred Goose. There you go. I prefer Goose.
And even looking back, some of the actors in there, like Tom Skerritt, and he was in like the original Alien film, and then Tim Robbins was even is one of the navigators in it. And Tim Robbins is a brilliant actor. Love him in Shawshank Redemption and things like that. So there's many stars in it. But again, you had motorbikes, you had a Porsche Roadster, you had F-14s, just all this, petrol, speed freaks type items. I mean, again, I was hypercritical because I was so into planes that I realised that the enemy MiGs were actually F-5E Tiger Sharks painted black with a red star on them. So hopefully the new film will have some proper enemy aircraft in it rather than borrowed, reconditioned and painted planes from the US Air Force.
So how did you make the leap? Because I think this is fascinating. We are going to talk about what it was like to move from Yorkshire and come south of Watford Gap, and what it was like moving from Yorkshire to leafy suburbia, sweet suburbia, as the song goes. But I'm intrigued. How did you make the leap? At what age did you decide that you were going to try? And I think it's incredible you did this to get down to the last 150. To join the RAF. It's not a small feat. It's incredible. So can you tell us about that? I mean, I know there'll be the disappointment side.
Yeah, and it was. But again, I say it goes back, and it's about influential people and inspirations in my life. And my grandfather was one of them because I had two very militarian grandfathers from my mother's side, an army. My grandfather was from the army. My dad's side, he was more in the Royal Navy and on naval ships. So then I thought, we'll just make it a full house and I'll go for the Air Force. But my granddad from my mother's side used to traipse around the country and take me to air shows, and where's the noise? We always just say, where's the noise? Where's it? And then the big Vulcan bomber would come in, or the Harrier jump jet would take off, and that. And I remember watching a tornado for the first time. It did the pass, and the plane went past. I was like, oh, there's no noise. And then a second later, when the speed of sound caught up and a big boom, and you could feel the inside of its tummy rumbling. I thought, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to be when I grow up. So I was probably sort of 9-10 years old when I started developing that passion for aircraft. Obviously went to college and I was focused and just wanted to, that's all I wanted to ever be. Unfortunately, at that time, my eyesight was good enough and I was a bit fitter than I am today, so I could pass those tests. I've always liked testing, as I say, being an aquarian that's analytical. I like problem solving, so a lot of those aptitude tests were problem solving, how you would react in certain situations. But equally, after getting down that selection from thousands to the last 150, yes, it was bitter disappointment that I wasn't good enough, but it was, as a Top Gun saying, it's the best of the best that get through, especially to be a fighter pilot. But yeah, it didn't quite work out, and I looked for other routes to get into the RF to become an engineer and things like that. But I didn't quite have the same level of passion and drive and enthusiasm to want to do that. Although I wanted to be close to aircraft, I wanted to be in the front seat and flying those things.
So I want to pick up on that because we spoke yesterday, obviously, and well, not obviously, that's a really bad thing. Nobody knows that, but we spoke yesterday, and I love your passion. Your passion is incredible, and I love your passion because you serve people. You don't sell, you serve. And I'd like to expand a bit more about your passion, because to switch your passion from RAF fighter pilot to engineering is quite a huge switch.
Yeah,
you're still really passionate and driven by it, so I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I wanted to be a pilot, and then started looking into more commercial pilot, and again didn't get through to that. And helicopters, so I applied for Western Helicopters. I then did get a apprenticeship ready for British Aerospace Systems, as it was those days, in Kingston. I think they made components for the Harrier jump jets, and I got an apprenticeship there, so I was already started, happy days. And then literally about 2-3 weeks before I was due to join, I got a letter through the post saying they were shutting the factory down and the apprenticeship was cancelled. So again, another disappointment. So what do? You wander around. My dad was an engineer. He was more in process control, SCADA controls for petrochem plants and things like that. So again, I'd always been brought up on technical problem solving, engineering. So I went out there and eventually sort of more fell into an apprenticeship with a company called Safe Controls, building energy management systems. So, HVAC, air conditioning. But again, did that, was learning. I don't think I was a particularly brilliant academic. I didn't really have a passion to go to university per se. I like to learn on the job and learn with my hands and learn when I'm actually doing things. So it's more of a practical side, which I've always been that way. So again, whilst having that balance and blend between going to college, doing your exams, but then focusing on an industry. But again, you did things like maths and climatology and physiology and, pressure drops and flow rates and all this good stuff. So again, there's still enough stimulation from the educational side, but also working and getting paid. And every time you pass your exams, you got a healthy pay rise. So, always from that point, I was into technology. What I loved about the construction industry was the variety, because no two buildings are really the same. So it's not like it's always the same. There was a little bit of variance where it is. Got to travel around the UK, commissioning, did software engineering, project management, and then eventually sort of fell into sales. And then worked through some of the big corporates like your Honeywells and Thorn, which now became Tyco, and Johnson Controls now, ECS lighting controls. That was interesting because that was another innovative product that could, do addressable lighting. Right the way through to Assa Abloy as heading up the access control division, promoting the Aperio wireless locks. So again, technology, moving away from more of a traditional method to where I am today at QCIC, and we've got this whole design, build, run model. We're really thinking about security in a different way and using automation technology to eradicate human error and provide consistency. So just those little technological innovations really stimulate me, and I'm passionate about it. And hopefully, as you say, I serve my audience well to show the passion. And it's not just that I'm selling something because I'm being paid by the company. I'm selling something because I believe in it.
So there's a lot of people that listen to the Wise Why that have never, until we started this, and every, I don't bring, it's not a security podcast, but it brings on some security people, because as a industry, you don't advertise yourself because you can't. Let's be honest, one of the things that is very difficult for somebody in security is to go out there and blast yourself out on social media. So, you're being brave and you're stepping out of the norm. But if you could sum up the security industry in a sentence, this is a hard one, but you did say I could do this to you. So if you could sum up succinctly to somebody who's never even thought what is the security industry, because when people think about security, they think of a doorman.
You do. Absolutely.
What is the difference between working in the security industry and being a doorman? Just so somebody can understand what we're talking about.
That's a tough one. Thanks, Kirsty. That is a tough one.
I know.
It's just the protection of people, assets, and items, and keeping people safe and sound. I mean, yes, a doorman will, recognise if someone's not quite right to go in there, and it can eject them. But using technology and what we call physical security, even though it's called physical, it's still not a doorman. It's not a man guarding. It's the electronic elements behind it, whether that's access control, whether it's CCTV, whether it's intruder. It's all a combination of protecting that asset and keeping the people within those areas safe. So we have a lot of high profile corporate global clients. Obviously can't be named under strict NDA, so you've got to be very careful what you do and do not say about them. But again, they're using technology to drive analytics to see where penetration could happen from a cyber perspective. We do things like hostile vehicle mitigation. So we've got really nice architectural lakes outside buildings. They're not really lakes. They're there to stop someone piling into the building with a truckload of explosives. So it's all little things. It's about subtle. So you don't want cameras in your face. You want covert, discreet cameras that you feel like you're not being watched, but you are being watched. And it's basically the layers of an onion is the way that security works, from right in the heart of it, high security, right the way to your perimeter. So difficult question, isn't it? But it's
I would just say, well, I love the analogy back to the onion. I think that actually sums it all up, because you've got the heart, and then you go out and out and out, and it's about protecting. So thank you, because somebody actually asked me, what is the security industry? And I said, I'll bring it on to the next time. I just didn't give you a heads up, because it's overthought, and I do have a big thing about overthinking. I want to go back to your childhood.
Sure.
You talked about your granddad. You talked about moving from Yorkshire to, well, not Yorkshire, was it? It was
Yorkshire to Cheshire and then to Surrey, yeah.
So what was that like? Because how old were you?
It all happened at once, really, Kirsty. I was sort of, let's say, born in Yorkshire. Then we moved to Cheshire when I was about 6 or 7. Again, it's pretty local. It's not far down the road per se, and still the accent wasn't a massive variance. But then heading south when I was around 11 or 12, that's when it sort of hit me, because, I came down from the north with a name of a film of a devil child, which was providing enough ridicule on its own, to then be, hey up, how are you doing, to all these Danny Dyer-esque type Southerners. I stood out like a sore thumb. I was the black sheep in the classroom area. I was the hub of a lot of jokes and taunting. And again, it toughened me up, though. I mean, whilst it was not very nice at that point in time, and again, even at that point, I was quite a shy introvert person. I was always a bit anxious and a bit nervy, and I didn't want to, I remember having a conversation with Dad, and I was, didn't want to move to the south. And another factor was that my parents had recently got divorced. I was staying with my dad, and my dad had got promoted to move down south. So I'd had everything thrust upon me at, quite a young age. Plus moving from the north to the south, my dad had a new European role with a very good global company, so he had to put the effort in to solidify that position, keep his position within that company. So I quickly became the cook, the cleaner, the ironer, the shopper at a very young age. So it developed me, it made me independent. I had no choice. So you survive or die, and there was a lot of factors all at once, but I think that helped distract from some of the taunting and the Mickey taking that ensued while I was at school.
It's incredible, because I changed school. We all changed school. Let's be honest. We all changed school around 11, 12 or 13, depending where you are. And I changed from my local school and I went into London. And the perception was that I was posh.
Mm-hmm.
I was really, really posh. To be fair, I did go to a private school, and it was a very elite school. So I went to Arts Educational, which is where you do half your day is dance or drama and the other half the day is academics. So it was very different. and it was a very small school. So I can't, and I'd love you to expand on this, what it was like to come from the north to the south and go into such a big school, because I've got no concept. Now, I know 90% of the people out there do, but there were only 150 pupils in my school, and that was secondary. So I can't imagine the level of Mickey taking, we'll call it Mickey taking, that went on my school. The worst thing that ever happened to me was my school dress was stuffed down the toilet, and I came back from my dance class and found that somebody had picked up my school dress. And it's at that point we called it Mickey taking, but actually it is bullying. And they shoved it down into the toilet, and that meant I had to go home in my dance clothes, which meant I walked from the Barbican all the way down to my parents' house wearing a cape. So we talk about sorry,
Superwoman.
Do you know what? It wasn't a Superwoman cape. It was turquoise, and we won't go there. I had bright pink tie. No, I was in ballet clothes. Just that's giving you an image now. But what was it like coming down and walking into that school for the first time? Did you make friends quickly, or was it always Damien with the ear because of that film?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough because I came in. It wasn't like the first introduction when you go from your 11 plus and you step up to the secondary. So most of the people have been there a year and they've found their friendship groups. They're called today. We just call them mates back in the old days. I think the other thing which was interesting fact was when I was at Sandbach, I went to Sandbach School, which was at that time a grammar school, all boys. So it came down to suddenly as females. Going through 12 years old, you're starting to sort of hit that hormones are kicking in as well. So I was very nervous around females at that time, coming from this with a funny accent and on my own, didn't have any, you're in a place where nobody, absolutely nobody. And it did take me a little bit of time to find my feet, find the people that I wanted to be friends with. And I would always say I was one of those in-betweeners. I was never in the ultra popular group, and I wasn't, one of the geeky people in the other group. I was that sort of middle range. But I think that's something one of my other bosses has said is that the way I work, I'm very much he called me a chameleon. I could step up and have a conversation with the CEO, but then I can go and meet Bob, the installer on site, and not make them feel, pressured, or can have that articulate in different variables and understand my surroundings and cope and adapt. So I think that's what I had to do. I had to sort of pick my friends selectively, and you tried a few, didn't work out, and I moved on. Eventually did find a very good friendship group, and did remain friends for quite a while. I mean, sadly now, with everything that's transpired in life and family and work, and I don't really keep in touch with or don't see anybody from my school days any longer. But even despite the Mickey taking, the taunting, the incessant, language and up and ecky thump and do you want some black pudding and all that sort of thing that would was synonymous with the North versus the South. I look back with my school as with fond memories. I mean, I'm always that glass half full sort of person, optimistic. So there's going to be some negatives, but I think, oh no, but I did this at school and this was really good and this was really good. I always sort of package and box and put down the negativity and leave it packaged there, and rather would focus on the good things in life rather than dwelling on things which have been a bad experience. But you learn from your mistakes, and you made the point earlier about wanting to join the RAF. It was bitter disappointment because that's all I'd ever wanted to be, and I didn't have a backup plan for anything else. But yet in life, you've got to understand that, you're going to hear the word no, and it's how you cope with it and how it shapes you. And then for me personally, it drove and strove me to be what I am today and make me focus and understand what I want and where I wanted to get to.
I love that, because my next question was going to be, so how do you think your childhood has shaped you? And you've just answered that, and it's brilliant. So thank you. I want to talk about people who have, or I want to ask you about people who have inspired you along your way or supported you, because I think that's really important. I love gratitude. I love saying thank you to people. So who has inspired or supported you along the way?
Well, obviously the close family, parents, grandparents. I was an only child, so I didn't have any siblings per se. I mean, my dad did get remarried, and he moved, and eventually with his jobs to the Middle East, petrochem, there's a lot of that stuff from out there. So I do have a half brother and half sister, and they still live in the Middle East. And we're fairly close, but it wasn't like a true growing up bestie brother sister relationship. But yeah, some friends have inspired me. Certainly, some of my bosses along the way have inspired me. But predominantly, I think my parents and grandparents. They're the ones that have sort of been there for me, led me, shaped me, been a shoulder to cry on, and reposition me when I need to, and rebuild me. So there's been a lot of ups and downs through my life, and it's a roller coaster. So the people that are generally, and I do have quite a small true friends. I'm one of these people I've got a big network on LinkedIn, and know a lot of people in the industry, but I could probably count on one, possibly two hands, my true friends that I'd always rely on in a sticky situation, and they're my confidants, because I'm Aquarian, I'm deep. I like to keep things boxed in into myself. I'm not very good, believe it or not, articulating, talking about myself and my feelings, but that's just my DNA, unfortunately.
So my brother is Aquarian. I grew up with that, and I used to, and I love my husband. He's brilliant, but oh my goodness, he's a Sagittarius. I can't say what I called him because it's rude, but he's a Sagittarian. I had to stop myself, so I have a rude phrase for a Sagittarian.
Yes.
Yes, but he's an island. And I have to read it sometimes, but I don't think that's necessarily a star sign thing. So just before we go down that, I think that's quite the difference between men and women. I was reading an article once where it was like, in our heads as a woman, we think there's something wrong, but actually it's normally a man is sitting there trying to work out what they want to do next with the car. So do I want to upgrade the exhaust? Something we wouldn't even think about. Or how can I put my tools up in the garage? And I think that I remember saying to Dennis, what's going on? You're deep in thought. This has been going on for days. And eventually he turned around and went, oh, I'm working out how to put the hooks on the wall to hang the bikes up. I thought there was something seriously wrong. It wasn't. And I think that male-female brain, and I'm not going into the gender side, but the way we think, the way we are is quite different.
Yeah.
The way we process. I'm emotional. I think there has to be emotion behind stuff. And my husband's analytical and goes, no.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, but yeah, it's that balance, I guess. Everyone's different. That's why it's like a variety in it, and people, and that's why I love doing the role I do. It's a lot of people watching, people monitoring, understanding what makes one person tick versus another person tick. And, particularly you've got to, when you're trying to promote, and I hate the word sell, but, when you're trying to promote the business and the services that you provide, etc., different people have different values, and you've got to find out what they value. It might be price, it might be security, it might be brand. There's a variety of different things, and you've got to get under that skin and create that personal relationship and find out what makes one person tick. And it's very different from what makes you tick to what makes me tick or the next person down the line. So, but I really love this whole people watching and understanding the way that we work as the creatures that we are. And it was interesting because I went to an event, a funny story, and one of the guest speakers there was an ex-military frontline trooper with special forces, and he was a reconnaissance individual. He said he'd spent months dug in a hole just watching the enemy, just understanding, seeing what they're doing, the patterns, and it was all about people watching. And I said to him, just off the cuff, I said, well, what am I like? And literally he was to a T. He goes, you come into a room and you will sort of scan the room and you'll see and you'll evaluate people really quickly, and then you'll sort of not give people permission to talk to you, but you'll let people come and talk to you. You'll be more open and approachable for some people than others. And I was like, wow, that's pretty spot on, considering you met me 30 seconds ago, to have that sort of understanding of people and the way people act and little traits to watch out for.
Yeah, no, I love people watching. I'm the same. We've had a couple of people comment, which is really lovely. So we've had Joanne, Rubina, and have both. Oh, and Peter Mawson have said hello. So Joanne Herman and Rubina. I love Rubina. She's just amazing. So Joanne says, "I love your passion about aviation." She tried to join the RAF. I never knew that. At universities, they didn't have women pilots. They asked me to put weight on. Can you imagine that? Because the ejector seat wouldn't register her. She was a professional skater. So, and of course she would have found that difficult, but she would have loved to have joined. So again, there's that thing of lovely Peter, sorry, just in Peter's comment, oh, I'm a Sagittarian. I'm still not going to tell you. I will text you.
That doesn't surprise me, Peter. I know a few stories about Peter, but we'll leave that there. It's not for wise why.
Oh, I bet we're going to have that beer. And then there was
Well,
another.
there was a lot of that involved, Kirsty, to be fair.
Sorry?
I will tell a funny story, Peter, forgive me. We were in Dubai at an event. It was at Asa. Peter kindly said he'd do an interview, and we'd both been at McGettigan's Irish bar for a little bit too long. We watched the footage back, and it was hilarious. We're like two semi-drunken people. Oh, Damien, what did you like about the show? Well, Peter, it was hilarious. Ask Peter if he's still got the footage, because it was hilarious.
Peter, shout out, I want to see this footage, okay? I won't critique it. Joanne says, how do you feel about the Vulcan being out of service?
Sorry?
How do you feel about... Yeah.
I mean, it pains me. I mean, again, another funny story. During lockdown, the first time when it was 28 days later everywhere, I actually do a lot of cycling. So I'd cycle from a house at Heathrow and cycle the perimeter road. No aircraft turned up, no hotels were up, and it was really eerie. And as you got towards Hatton Cross Station, and there's a Concorde still on the tarmac, and what a travesty, a beautiful piece of engineering equipment. Now, again, I've been to Brooklands Museum and seen how they actually made it go supersonic for a passenger airline and all that good stuff. And it's just, but the great thing is it's never been surpassed. The Americans could never build anything that would go as fast as it, or it looked as beautiful. And same for the Vulcan. I always remember going, we used to have a caravan as a child up in Lincolnshire, in Mablethorpe. And we used to come back past Scampton, and that's where the Vulcans ran. I remember being at the end of the runway, my dad had parked, then we waited for half an hour. And then this massive shadow came over this delta wing. It's a beautiful piece of engineering, and sadly won't take to the airs ever again. In fact, I was fortunate. I did see the final sort of goodbye show down in Bournemouth and at Farnborough. But it was great in Bournemouth on the beach watching the Vulcan do the fly past and stuff. And it's, nostalgic. It's sad when you see these aircraft go out of service. Again, I thought the Harrier jump jet was another feat of engineering, which was amazing, particularly in my age. I remember the Falklands conflict pretty well. And I remember being in the Air Cadets, and they had this picture on the wall of the number of RAF kills versus the Argentinians. And it was literally, seldom have so many been taken by so few. That was the tagline. It was literally 3 RAF Harriers shot down and 427 Argentinian aircraft.
Wow.
But it was. I mean, I'm sad. Go back. I've waffled on about that, but really sad when these iconic aircraft go out of service. It's just such a shame. I mean, I suppose the positive thing is that you do still get to see the Spitfire, the Hurricane, and the Lancaster. From World War II. I think there's only one of those flying again now.
So I'm spoilt where I live, because I live in between Benson, Brize Norton, and of course we have the Abingdon Air Show. So, and out the back of my house, it's not mine, there is a landing strip. So it's not mine, it's the local landowner, and we have planes that come in all the time, and I am so lucky. And also my granddad did the electrics on Concorde.
Well, funny you should say Abingdon and Brize Norton, because again in the Air Cadets, Abingdon was where you used to fly the Chipmunks, which is a twin-seater prop-driven air experience flight aircraft. And I went to 2 camps at Brize Norton, so that was obviously troop carriers, so it was VC-10s back in those days. Really bizarre that all military aircraft, the seats face the wrong way, because obviously on impact you don't want to, damage it too much. But again, I think one of the greatest things I did there was we went up in a Hercules, opened the bay doors and started chucking. We did load masting. So you did a fly past, you start chucking stuff with the parachutes out the back, and it was just amazing. And I know we spoke yesterday, and I will get it in, is that close to where I live is RAF Odium, which is where they keep the helicopters, so the Chinooks and the Pumas. And the Chinook was noisy. We had the back open, flying through the air. But again, I'm getting goosebumps even talking about it. Was in the Air Cadets, we went out one day. We went out in this Puma. We did like tree skimming. So you were in this big helicopter with the doors open, sat on the sides, and you sort of hitting the top of the trees. Then we all chucked ropes out and abseil out like A-team. It's just amazing.
I love that. We've had a couple of more comments from Jo. She says, I agree with Concord. Last question. Are you going to see the flight path in London next week? I've seen the practice, but are you going to see the flight path in London next week?
I'm hoping to. I am hoping to. I mean, I remember being when it was the 100-year anniversary of the RAF, and that was amazing. Sort of seeing all those aircraft right the way through to the new Lightnings, the Harrier replacements, and yeah, that was quite a sight to behold. So I'm planning to, hope to. Fortunate enough that I have an office right in the city, so hopefully I can coincide that to see that when that happens.
Damien, it has been an absolute pleasure. Oh no, you're supposed to. This is where I turn it around. I nearly got away with it. I nearly forgot. Yes, you get to ask me a question. You get to ask me a question.
So I had something to prepare, but I've actually, because I'm trying to sort out position and everything and changes, I've actually left my questions next door and I've completely gone a blank. But
that's okay. I quite like that.
This is sped by, and I haven't even talked about other things. So maybe I need a second one about, I'm surprised you didn't go into a lot of people ask about the DJing side of things, but we'll leave that there for this.
Yeah, we didn't. I don't know how we didn't get onto the DJ. Wow. We will have to be back on. And I'm just going to put it out there. This is the person who said, I don't have a very interesting life. I think we've just proved you do. Yeah.
Well, again, I think I'd ask you is, we've met a few times. We've never had that proper beer that, as you said, but, what do you want to be remembered for as your legacy after all this has happened and Kirsty's finished her career? What would you most like to be remembered for?
I'd like to be remembered for being kind. And I know that's what people don't want to be remembered of. But I'm really, at the moment, I'm finding the world quite painful. I think that's the best way to describe it. We've come out of COVID and everyone's angry. Everyone seems to be angry, and emotions are boiling and on the point of exploding. And we seem to have forgotten kindness and perspective. So I would love to be remembered as somebody who was kind, who always could see things from both sides. So instead of wading straight in with my ferocious temper, which I do have, but I keep in check, I would really love to be remembered for being kind and looking at things from both sides, but also that I've inspired my daughter. That's really key for me. So, inspiring my daughter to be another strong, independent person and to be who they are and to be seen and not to compromise within reason, but not compromise who they are. So that's what I'd like.
Mm-hmm. I mean, again, I share that. One of my key phrases I see even on our corporate side, and to me, what's very important is integrity. It's about saying and doing the right things when nobody's watching. And can you look in the mirror and say, okay, I've not got everything right, but I've done the absolute best to my ability. And I've been a kind person. I've not been an idiot. Yeah, I get road rage and I cut people up now and again, but it's not meant out of malice. It's just heat at the moment. And to your point, I think you're absolutely spot on. Is particularly where I reside, is in an area sort of a housing estate per se. And everyone was like, there was a big air of camaraderie and we made the best of pitching in through COVID and all this good stuff. And even, you went round and everyone queued without being aggressive about it because we had to do it. But now everyone's just reverted back. It's like the freedom's come, the masks are off, everyone's scuffling around to get a seat on the train. There doesn't seem to be any thought for anyone anymore again. It would be just completely revert to the way we were before it all happened.
Yeah, it's just, I find it... She's scratching her head there, literally scratching my head. Talk about your body responding. I'm finding it really hard and challenging because everybody, and I'm going to say it on air, every single person has been traumatized by the pandemic. Our children are traumatized by the pandemic. The teachers, the doctors, every person who stayed working, the security industry, all the people who stayed working are traumatized through the pandemic. It's not gone away. It's just we're trying to adapt, and we need to adapt to it with kindness. And I wish we'd stop hitting the emergency button to go and exploding when actually we could just talk.
Yeah.
There you go. That's my lecture for the morning. Ooh.
Closing comments.
It's been an absolute pleasure. It really has. We haven't even touched on the DJing. The man who said, I don't have a very interesting life has a fabulous life. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Kirsty.